You're alone. No one is watching. And yet, you're talking. Maybe it's a quiet mutter while you search for something you've misplaced. Maybe it's a full debate with yourself in the shower, both sides, every argument, complete with rebuttals. Maybe you've caught yourself doing it and felt a flicker of something uncomfortable. Am I strange? Is something wrong with me? The answer is no. But the reason why, that's what most people never get to hear. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes with having a fast mind. Not loneliness from lack of people, loneliness from being the only person who seems to experience the world at the speed you do. Thoughts don't arrive one at a time for you. They arrive in clusters, tangled, overlapping, urgent. And somewhere along the way, your brain found a solution. It started using your voice. Not because something was wrong, because something was working. When you speak to yourself out loud, you aren't losing touch with reality. You are doing something that most people's minds never demand of them. You are externalizing a deeply internal process, taking something abstract and giving it weight, shape, sound. And psychology has a very specific explanation for why your brain operates this way. For a long time, talking to yourself was treated as a quirk, a symptom, something to hide. But modern cognitive science has shifted that view entirely. Researchers now understand that self-directed speech, what psychologists call private speech, is not a sign of dysfunction. It is a sign of a mind that is actively working. Children do it naturally. When a child is learning to tie their shoes, they narrate every step out loud. Loop, pull, through, done. They aren't performing for anyone. They are using language as a cognitive scaffold, a structure to hold the task steady while their mind works through it. At some point, most people internalize that voice. They learn to keep it silent. But some minds, particularly those with high cognitive load, deep processing tendencies, or strong analytical drives, never fully let it go. Not because they failed to grow, because their minds kept growing, and the internal voice wasn't enough. The first psychological mechanism at work is what researchers call cognitive structuring through vocalization. Here's the simple way to understand it. Your mind generates thoughts the way a river generates current, constantly, in multiple directions, often turbulent. When you speak a thought out loud, you do something remarkable. You convert that current into a single stream. The act of hearing your own voice creates a feedback loop between two major cognitive systems, your language processing network and your executive function center. Speaking engages Broca's area in your brain, the region responsible for language production. But it also activates the prefrontal cortex, the part of your mind responsible for organizing, prioritizing, and evaluating. When both systems are engaged simultaneously, your thinking becomes more structured, more precise, less chaotic. This is why you talk yourself through a problem the way a surgeon might talk through a procedure. Not because you need to hear it, because the act of saying it organizes what comes next. The second mechanism is something psychologists call stimulus upregulation. When you're searching for your phone, your keys, your glasses, and you say the word out loud, something measurable happens in your brain. Your visual cortex activates more intensely. A 2012 study by Gary Lupian and Daniel Swingley found that participants who said the name of an object while searching for it located it significantly faster than those who searched in silence. Your voice in that moment is acting like a search command. You are narrowing the visual field. You are telling your brain precisely what to look for, and your brain responds by filtering out everything that isn't relevant. This isn't distraction. This is directed perception. Most people lose time in the gap between knowing what they want and finding it. You have learned, without necessarily knowing it, how to close that gap. The third mechanism may be the most psychologically significant. Research by Ethan Cross at the University of Michigan found that people who speak to themselves in the second or third person, you or their own name, experience measurably lower emotional distress during stressful events. You might say, "Okay, you've handled hard things before. You know what to do." That small grammatical shift from I to you creates what psychologists call psychological distance. It pulls you out of the center of your own emotional storm. Suddenly, you aren't drowning in the feeling. You are standing slightly apart from it, observing it, coaching someone through it. That someone happens to be you. This is called distanced self-talk, and it is one of the most effective self-regulation tools that exists, not because it suppresses emotion, but because it gives the thinking mind enough room to work alongside the feeling mind. You become your own steady presence in moments when everything else feels unstable. There is a fourth mechanism, quieter than the others, but perhaps the most profound. When you read something aloud or repeat information you want to keep, you create what psychologists call the production effect. Coined by researcher Colin MacLeod, the production effect refers to the finding that words spoken aloud are remembered significantly better than words processed in silence. The reason is this. Speaking a word is a more complex cognitive act than reading it silently. It requires motor planning, auditory processing, vocal coordination. All of these additional layers create a richer, more distinct memory trace. Your brain treats spoken information as more meaningful than silent information. It marks it, tags it, files it somewhere it can find again. If you've ever noticed that you remember things better when you say them out loud, now you know why. Your voice is a second layer of encoding, and your mind has been using it as a filing system without ever being taught to. Understanding why your mind works this way is one thing. Knowing how to work with it is another. Here are 4 principles, each grounded in psychology, that can help you use this trait with intention. First, narrate your problem before you try to solve it. When something feels tangled, don't push straight for the answer. Speak the situation out loud first, as if you're explaining it to a thoughtful stranger. This activates your cognitive structuring process and gives your prefrontal cortex the input it needs to organize a response. The act of describing is often the first step toward solving. Second, name what you're looking for always. This isn't superstition, it's neuroscience. Whether you're searching for a word, an object, an idea, or an emotion, give it a name out loud. Your visual and conceptual systems respond to language more precisely than they respond to vague intention. Specificity accelerates retrieval. Third, use your own name when the pressure rises. When you feel anxiety, frustration, or overwhelm building, shift from first person to second or third. Instead of, "I don't know how to handle this," say, "Your name, what do you actually need right now?" That small shift activates distanced self-talk. It doesn't suppress what you're feeling. It creates just enough space to think alongside the feeling, rather than inside it. There is a fourth principle. Speak to remember, not just to process. When something matters, a decision you've made, an insight you've had, something you want to hold on to, say it out loud. Don't just think it, speak it. Your production effect will do the rest. The memory trace will be deeper, cleaner, and far more retrievable than anything processed in silence. Here is the simplest way to hold everything you've heard today. Your mind is not a quiet lake. It is a river, and your voice is the channel that gives that river direction. Without it, the water spreads, broad, shallow, and hard to navigate. With it, the current deepens, the thinking sharpens, the emotions find a path rather than flooding the banks. You were never talking to yourself because something was wrong with your mind. You were talking to yourself because your mind was working, hard, constantly, and in ways that silence simply couldn't contain. There is a version of yourself that was told to stop muttering, to keep it inside, to wonder quietly if the habit meant something was off. That version didn't need fixing. That version needed understanding. The mind that talks to itself is not a broken mind. It is a mind that takes its own thinking seriously, that coaches itself through difficulty, that marks what matters and lets go of what doesn't, that has learned in its own quiet way how to stay upright in the storm.